Hello, my name is Cole Prower, and I am very excited to be presenting from Venice, California, with the help of my amazing mentor, Natalie, who is currently getting her master's in musicology at Princeton University, my findings on deaf musicality through the lens of oralism, which is teaching via lip reading, manualism, which is teaching via sign language, and deaf culture. Now, I really relate to this topic in two key ways. Firstly, I am fully deaf in my left ear, so I can associate with the experience of hearing loss. And secondly, as you can probably guess from what's behind me, I love music. I've been playing piano since I was 7 and writing songs since I was about 4. And I have a lot of songs up on Spotify, and I would love it if you check me out directly after this. So why do I think that it's important to understand deaf culture, oralism, and manualism to understand the concept of deaf musicality? Well, because since the 1850s, which is to the present day, which is really the time period that I researched, the deaf community has had ideologies and methodologies of communication forced upon them. They haven't really had a say until pretty much more recently in contemporary times. So understanding what these ideologies were, how they were forced to behave, how they were forced to group up into communities or not, through that lens, we can really understand why they do or do not choose to associate with deaf culture in the modern day. So things really start off in the 1850s, which is when the first school of thought for deaf education, manualism, took off. Now, they did not have the best intentions in mind for the deaf community. They created a manualism, which again is also known as sign language, because they believed that the deaf, by not being able to hear the preach of the gospel, were unable to understand the word of God and thus had no path to morality. And in their minds, this made people more animalistic if you do not understand the word of God. Now, even though they started off with, again, pretty much bad intentions, or bad intentions as we would probably associate them with in the modern day, they actually did a very big positive for the deaf individuals, which was for the first time that they created deaf communities in American society. Because before that, these individuals had pretty much operated as just that, as individuals. The deaf people of American society did not really have a community to align with until manualism gave them one. However, this benefit was short-lived because in the 1860s, a new school of thought, oralism, was brought to the forefront of the discussion by its proponents, mainly its creator, Alexander Graham Bell. Now, the oralists saw these communities of deaf individuals growing, and they were afraid because, again, this is at the height of the 1860s eugenics movement in American society, and they were really scared that these new deaf communities would form a new type of the human species that were born fully deaf, and so they were afraid that these communities would grow and eventually just create fully deaf humans that were born like that and that they passed this on. Obviously, in today's age, this fear seems totally irrational, but in that day and age, it gained a lot of traction. So their big pitch to the government and to parents of deaf children was that through oralism, lip reading, these people could better assimilate into American society, and their pitch worked. Governments were convinced that it would be cheaper than providing schools for the deaf via manualism, and the parents of deaf children were convinced that through oralism they could assimilate their children and that deafness would not be an issue in their lives. And through these means, oralism all but superseded manualism for decades and probably even a century, because until the 1970s, so yeah, a century and 10 years, oralism was the main method of communication for the deaf, and it did a ton of damage because it destroyed these communities that manualism had worked so hard to build. So until the 1970s, again, oralism was at the forefront. But after that, and so 1980s, 1970s, 1990s, and onwards into the present day, oralism and manualism really dropped their hidden agendas, and it became up to the individual which system to associate with. So let's talk about musicality, because that is what my topic is about. Oralism, what they thought about musicality was this. They loved it in the beginning because they believed that through understanding musicality, deaf individuals could better pass off as hearing people and could better assimilate into society. Again, they were really, really into assimilation. Manualism, on the other hand, they didn't really care too much, to be honest. They allowed it because they thought that it was a good way of understanding means of non-oral communication. However, oralism, after a few years, they decided, just out of the blue, that music making by the deaf was corrupt because it was too mechanical since they could not hear what they were making. So eventually, both systems kind of disregarded music. But what they actually did was, in the present day, they gave people a way, or the deaf people a way, to put the two systems to work in tandem and create the ideal music listening and music creating experiences for these deaf individuals. So what we see in contemporaries like Evelyn Glennie, who is who focuses primarily on drums and bass, and through deaf rappers like Deepan and Sean Forbes, is that they have created new ways for deaf people to experience and create music. We see through Evelyn Glennie that vibrations and physicality is a great way of experiencing music, and through deaf rappers like Sean Forbes, we see that visuality of sign language can all but supersede actual orality and can create almost like a dance like rhythmic type of music that actually doesn't rely on orality pretty much at all. Through these two systems, and I can talk about the over romanticization of disability, the definition of disability, and a ton of other things that I'm excited to discuss if I'm chosen. Oralism and manualism laid the groundwork for deaf musicality for the better or worse, and these effects are still being felt today. And so, if I'm selected to present at the symposium, I would love to go much more in depth on the musicality aspect of this, and I am very excited, if I'm selected, to do some more research and present my findings. So thank you for your time, and goodbye.